My baby loves me, I'm so happy. Happy makes me a modern girl. Took my money and bought a TV. TV brings me closer to the world.
An ARC Stockton Homemakers Commission in partnership with Home Manchester by Vici Wreford-Sinnott. Siege Part 1. The Wrong Woman Discussions. 1C. Being Looked At. Part 1 of the Siege Commission centres on a series of 5 films with disabled performance makers discussing transgressive women, featuring Melissa Johns, Julie McNamara, Tammy Reynolds, B. Webster and Vici Wreford-Sinnott. Dedicated to all disabled women artists and activists making a difference to our world. Thank you. Audio description. Images of 6 women fill the screen. Vicky has teal hair and a spotty scarf to match. Julie Mac has short brown hair and is wearing her favourite blue jacket. Melissa has long blonde hair and is wearing a purple and blue top. B has long brown hair in a ponytail and is wearing a Kiss t-shirt. Tammy has short blonde curly hair and is wearing dildo earrings and a pink top. Sue, our BSL interpreter, has short blonde hair and is wearing a dark blue t-shirt. Everyone is seated in their home environments and there are a mix of group shots and solo shots. The second theme, which is who's in control of our images or our bodies, what does being looked at involve for disabled women, and we can speak in the most general of terms. Obviously it's entirely up to you. And why is it important that we take control? When we put ourselves out there, who's in control?
I had a show just before the lockdown, actually, end of February, and I sent them the script for the BSL interpreters and for the audio describers well in advance. And then a week before the show, the theatre got in touch with me to ask me to change and edit what I was doing because they were scared it was going to incite hate crime. And what I was performing is something I've performed multiple times in multiple venues, which is a 15 to 20 minute long monologue rant about Warwick Davis and how much his career choices had affected my life as a dwarf growing up and existing now. And it's quite absurd, it's dark, it's twisted, it's funny. It's mostly about me and my experiences, but I use him as this kind of target to get all of the abuse that I've experienced, and I just kind of throw it back in his direction. And the artistic director of the theatre company wanted me to change it because he was scared that Warwick Davis's people would get in touch or something. I don't know.
What a heap of bollocks.
Yes. And I was more angry because the whole point of that piece is about...
Sorry, I've just missed that. Yeah. Can you just go back to that bit again? Which bit did you miss?
So I was...
Yeah, got it. Missed the name. That's fine. She said, I missed the name. I've got the story. Makes sense now. Thank you, Tammy.
That's fine. And I was angry because the whole point of that piece is about gaining agency and taking control over that whole thing. And so for the director to ask me to change it seemed ridiculous to me. And so I told him that I would consider doing some kind of disclaimer at the end, maybe. I kind of knew that I wasn't going to do that, but I just wanted him to get off my back. And I performed the piece as is, and the artistic director stayed for the whole show, and he's one of those ones who apparently sometimes he just leaves. You know, the classic artistic director of a theatre company move. And yeah, and he emailed me afterwards thanking me for such a raw and brave performance. And I just, in that moment, it kind of demonstrated how little control we do have very often over how we work and what we do. And I could have easily thinking, oh, I'm so lucky to be allowed into this theatre to do this. I could have easily edited and pleased the company. But I'm not doing that anymore. Fuck it. Like, why? And I couldn't stop thinking about how many comedians that theatre's probably booked where they have midget gags in their shows.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And I was like, that's hate crime, but it's not, it's the right kind of hate crime. So it's okay. Go on.
It's perspective, isn't it? It's perspective, and you were offering a perspective that wouldn't have ever been thought about. I can't imagine, because I can only imagine the amount of people that do suggest, have you seen Warwick Davis in this, or have you seen him in that, to you, just like I am constantly asked, am I the girl that does CBeebies? And I'm not. And again, it's fine. It's just offering a different perspective, and because of who we are, we do that through comedy, or we do that through storytelling, or we do. And as you were saying it, I was thinking of all the comedians that I've got in my head now that would have named and used other comedians or other people in their sketches or in their, and how I can't imagine that would have ever come up. So that's a really interesting one, and again, where we just have to keep pushing through, just to show that there are, when it comes to disability, there is more than one perspective, and that's all we're trying to do here, is show you different perspectives.
Well, and the thing that comes through loud and clear is you're supposed to be the right kind of disabled person. You're supposed to be grateful. And if you're a disabled woman, learn to keep your head down and be grateful for crumbs. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, what happened to political satire? What happened to lampooning? What happened to truth to power? Because actually Warwick Davis has got heaps of money. Jesus wept. What a heap of bollocks that was. Anyway. I love your work, Tammy. I watch you online. It's brilliant. I can't wait to get into Liverpool when you're doing something. Or maybe you'll come down here one day in shady old cubby holes in Hackney.
Vicky, you probably know more about this because of being Newcastle, and with my show. But so I was in a TV show, and after being in that TV show, my iPhone was hacked, and my intimate photos were leaked everywhere onto porn sites. The papers got hold of it, and it was all over the news because of the sort of the platform from the show, and but more so because sadly things like that happen to women in the media quite regularly, but very rarely do they happen to a woman with a body difference, or a disabled woman. So lucky me for getting to be involved, right? So I right, apart from the first couple of hours where I was not in a very good place at all, because I didn't know what my 80-year-old Nana Pam was going to say. After lots of crying and working very closely with my agent, we ended up, I won't go into it too much because it's a long story, but we ended up turning it into quite a big conversation. My response ended up being a conversation for change, and approaching the perspective of slut shaming and body shaming for women, and more so disabled women. I'm doing a show now with the Lowry and Live Theatre, which is Arts Council funded. It's a one-woman show based on everything that happened and based on my experience growing up with such a clear body difference. I'd always found that I'd spent so many years of my life and so much of my time in general making sure that everybody else around me was okay with the way that I look, and growing up not having anybody just say to me, are you all right with it? Like, how do you feel? Do you want to talk about it? Is it shit? Are you upset? Do you hate it? Do you want to rip your arms off so that you can have new ones put on? How do you feel? Because those conversations don't really exist, or maybe I'm trying to empower them to exist a lot more now through some charities that I work with. But in the 90s and sort of noughties, they weren't really conversations that happened. From a very working class family, and my dad's actually a Romani gypsy. And if you know anything about Romani gypsies, your daughter having intimate photos leaked online, the two don't go too well. But it's not just about that story. You know, that story is kind of the cherry on the cake, really, after growing up with this life of really just hating this body that I had, because it was always about micromanaging everybody else's emotions about how my disabled asymmetric body looked. And it's been a really strange, exciting process doing this one woman show. It's directed by Lily Levin, who's an incredible director. And we were performing it at Elevator Festival at Live Theatre, and we were officially the last. We didn't have an audience. We had the office staff, because the day that we were meant to be, we arrived on the Monday ready for production week, and then all theatres got closed down that night. I know, but Live Theatre were amazing. They said, "Look, we can carry on. We'll tech the show," and they got like 5 or 6 people from the office to come and watch, and they set up my little dressing room for me, and it was very sweet. But the whole process has been really eye-opening for me and just a big learning curve, really, on how, you know, at every stage that you have to make a choice. You know, 2 hours, as soon as I got the call from my agent to say, newspaper that I won't name for obvious reasons, but I'm sure we all know which one I'm talking about, has got hold of photos of you, blah blah blah. You know, there was that immediate response. There was the response 2 hours later. There was the response a week later. And even now, how my response is growing through me being able to have agency over my own story. And you know, someone tried to have agency over my story. They tried to tell me part of the reason why I responded in the way I did was because I went online. I forced myself to go online and look at the photos and what had been written about me, and my body, as not only as a woman but as a disabled woman, had been depicted in a way that I wouldn't even wish on my, you know, my worst enemy. And so that, for me, I'm not very good at having people sort of talk for me or talk on my behalf, and that was kind of me going, I can't live like that, actually. I can't live with people making assumptions of me and my body, and I can't deal with this continuation of slut shaming and body shaming in women. And so that sort of started the journey that I'm on now with we've had it was a radio play that was written by Debbie Oates with myself, which was BBC Radio 4, and now the theatre show. And so it's working out who are the people that have got your back in this industry, I suppose, and who are ready to help you tell those stories. There's the ones that sort of maybe want to tell them for themselves, and there's the ones that want to go, do you know what, we'll give you the platform for you to share this however you need to share it. And I think it's really worth noting who those theatres are, who those production companies are, because they're going to be the ones that really help us kind of smash through this next layer.
Yeah. What a horrendous thing to have happened. I can't even begin to imagine what that experience was like. I really can't.
Crazy one, but yeah, it was. It's your response, isn't it? We can't help what happens to us in life, but we can try our hardest to control our response. Yeah.
I like that, taking back that agency and talking about the power. I mean, it's quite difficult, this, isn't it? Anyway, let me think. Okay, I was growing up and I always see the people hearing people who would be acting as deaf people, for example. You know, doing female characters, or a white person they would be playing, you know. It would be a white person playing an Asian person. It would be an able-bodied playing a disabled person, a straight person working as a queer character. and so on. I would see that as I was growing up, and I would look at them and think, okay, well, I'm never going to be able to become my dream of an actress or an actor. I'm not going to do that because I didn't see people like me there. You know, because everyone was doing everything else but everybody else. So it was like, I'm not there. You know, how to meet other disabled people, how to meet other people like me, to take that ownership of that strength and power back from the community. Because the representation isn't out there, or wasn't out there. And I don't think you can have that control. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't that control then, so I don't know how you can get that back at that point. So that's why, as a disabled burning person growing up, it's a bit weird, I guess, because I would think that they would be feeding us like our individual stories. Okay, so they might be talking about the danger of isolation, the danger of being alone, or being a single person. So the media, the films, the theatre would be feeding us what they wanted us to know. And as you're growing up, I found that was always the same old story. They would be feeding us what they wanted us to know. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
2005, I was commissioned to do a piece. So the programming looked really radical, it looked great, and I was really excited to get this commission, you know, deeply excited, till I saw the brochure. And what they had done with my image was shocking, because the work I was doing was cutting across crip and queer politics. And Pig Sister is all about identity and ownership of your own identity, both as a disabled woman, but certainly as a woman, and also for somebody who shuns that kind of binary. And in many ways, my work in Pigtails and Pig Sister was ahead of its time, because it was challenging the treatment of gender dysphoria in mental health clinics in this country. Pig Sister had an image of me. It was a bit like Judy Garland, to be honest. There's a beautifully celebrated image of Judy Garland with a suit jacket on, and it was an image of me, the top half of me, completely masculine female in terms of, look, my favourite suit jacket, this is the kind of thing. That's the palette we were looking for. My hair was short, slicked back, greased back. I had some dacks we'd found at the time, moustache, a little bit of stubble, beautifully done by the woman who did makeup for Vogue. Oh, nice slip. Anyway, and when we got to the brochure, which I have to say was not proofread by anyone in our team, they had cut the image in two. So all they showed at the top half of the image was just me in a suit jacket, which says absolutely nothing. The inside of their brochure was my leg with a high heel on, stiletto, bright pink shoe, whatever, and the leg wide open. And that was kind of bookended at the other side of the brochure. So what they'd done was chop my bottom half off, cut me through the cunt, put my left leg on the inside of the brochure and my right leg on the inside back of the brochure. And I was furious about this. I wrote to them, I was so distressed, and I said, with any other physicality of a disabled human being, you would not have chopped their body up. I want to challenge you, trigger warning, we're going to talk about sexual assault. I want to challenge you in what you chose to do with my body. Because as a woman who's experienced rape, I don't want you to cut through my cunt. I don't want you to spread my legs. And I don't want you to dismember me as a human being and an artist. And the thing that most distressed me was they got an award through Creative Scotland for their brochure. And I wrote to them and said, withdraw it. Take the brochure off. We never agreed this. And I had to live with that for years, because this woman who has a lot of money and a lot of power wrote to me and said, I'm going to apologise publicly. I completely accept what you're saying, where you've come from. We're so very sorry, but please carry on, come with your show and be part of our programme. So stupidly, I believed her. I went up there. We did the show, and never once did she come to speak to me. Never once did she apologise. So every night at the end of the show, I told my story.
Just very quickly. I want to say, I'm talking about an experience as a deaf woman. Sometimes it's really hard to get that power back, that ownership back, because we don't have access to information, the basic information. I mean, some will say that deaf people are disabled, and others will say, actually, we're a minority language group, and that is it. And to be fair, I think we're probably both. Because if we go back to the language issue, we need the language to access our right being language, using sign language to express ourselves. For example, I'm thinking sign language, the full means you find that, you know, the feminist, it's a wrong sign for me. It's a wrong thing. And I think, you know, gender equality isn't necessarily about all those things. It's about exclusion, non-binary people. It's not, you know, with people that don't conform, naturally don't conform. They're included in society, but maybe don't naturally conform. So non-binary person, how do you explain that to people? Gender, I hate the sign gender, men, women. I hate that as a sign. Because then people think, okay, so it must be men and female, men, women. You know, gender is a human person, if you like. But how can you then take back that power if you don't have access to information and you don't know how to necessarily express yourself articulately through the language? And some deaf women, for example, domestic abuse, if you use that can be very, very hard because, again, where do you get the information about domestic abuse? Where do you get that access to the information? Do you bring an interpreter? Do you trust that interpreter, for example? Maybe that interpreter knows the abuser. It's very, very difficult. So yes, deaf people are disabled, but it's about a language being recognised as well as a language minority. So for me, we fit into both platforms.
Yeah. But it is really difficult, and many people are completely isolated in this.
And yeah, absolutely. I mean, just think about the current situation with, you know, the coronavirus updates. What's going on? There's no interpreter there at the daily updates. In Scotland, they have it. So where is our access to the information on a daily basis for the coronavirus updates?
My baby loves me, I'm so happy. Happy makes me a modern girl. Took my money and bought.
Some thank yous. Title credit, The Wrong Woman, is a term used by Julie McNamara in her theatre practice and research. Thank you to BSL Interpreter Sue Lee, ARC Stockton, Annabelle Turpin and Daniel Mitchelson, Home Manchester, Jude Christian and Kevin Jameson, to all of the disabled practitioners who keep me going every day, my gorgeous family. Please note this was filmed on Zoom during 2020 lockdown. Piss on pity.
My money and bought a TV.